guys, on Sunday, we will raffle it somewhere at midnight from Sunday to Monday. And only on Sunday you are allowed to send donations and buy the tickets with your donations for this patch, for the raffle of this patch. One ticket is $10. You can buy as many of them as you want. And today you focus on closing Silicon Curtains and ATP Geopolitics fundraisers, because these guys are doing a great job in, first of all, advocating for Ukraine, and secondly, raising money for these trucks non-stop and just keep going and going, campaign after campaign. They're joining Car for Ukraine, and I thank you for this, guys, because, you know, as a Ukrainian who also raise funds, I know that I'm not alone, and I have team members like you who can, who can support other units, those that I cannot support, because it's impossible to help everyone. This is why it's better to have a backup, and you guys are being my backup, I'm being your backup. We sometimes don't even know about this, but we all are pieces of the very important puzzle that is called Ukrainian defense, and with those cars we actually give them the additional chance to survive, because without cars, the chances to survive are much smaller. So everyone who is donating today or any other day, you gotta know that you are providing an additional chance to soldiers to survive. So thank you for all the donations and all the attention, because people who cannot donate, who don't have the means, and that's totally okay. I've been there. I've been there in my life many times. And it's important to share the links. It's important to ask your friends and family members, maybe even your enemies, to donate to these fundraisers, okay? And just build a network and try to make your own contribution bigger than just your own. Try to connect other people. Try to make it a movement, just like Stefan Baer does. Damn, that guy was very clever to start a whole network and building 50 teams of 50 states for Ukraine. That's his initiative. 50 states for Ukraine. So his goal is 1,000 trucks. It's an ambitious goal, but he is not raising it himself. He's building at least 50 teams, because the United States has also some territories, not only the states. And it's going to be more teams. And those teams are going to be grinding themselves. So it's a very clever move that I really am, getting my hat off to Stefan. So thank you for having me here, guys, today. It was a pleasure. Always happy to chat with you, and I would love to do more rant together, Jonathan. And Jonathan,
and I'd love to come on to your channel a lot more and help out. In fact, we'll see you in Kiev in November when we'll join the studio.
Looking forward to it.
We'll do another monster fundraiser, but face to face, which would be cool.
Let's do it. Okay, guys.
Thanks, Rick. I really appreciate your expertise there and drumming up the support. You are a legend in your own underwear. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Live long, prosper, and donate. And I say lately, and the sun will rise over the free Donbass.
Yes.
I like that.
Nice one, brother. Yes. Nice one, brother.
And when the Ukrainian sun rises, the Russian sun will set, as Joker Dudayev said, something along those lines.
Yep. Okay, guys. Peace.
Cheers, Rick. Thanks so much for coming on.
Take care, Rick.
Bye. Bye. Now we should get Sean and Kristaps to introduce themselves. Just give them the chance to say a couple of words for those who aren't familiar with them, who are in the audience today. Sean, over to you.
I'm talking to you from Dnipro. I live in Ukraine. I've lived here since 2018. My family are Ukrainian. I was projected by Russia after the battle for Mariupol. I was a Marine. I was part of the 36th Brigade who fought in Mariupol in the opening days of the invasion and was captured and held in captivity for several months. I was released in a bizarre twist of fate in a deal brokered by President Zelensky and the Saudi prince and Roman Abramovich, of all people. As a West Ham fan, that's really hard to swallow. So I was bailed out by a former Chelsea owner. and swapped for Viktor Medvedchuk and 55 Russians. When I received a death penalty, I was looking at obviously that. So I was quite obviously eager to get exchanged. So, and that's really our campaign now. I raise money for charity. I started my own YouTube channel quite recently, which is something alien to me. I spent my whole life moving away from that media because I was in the military for 13 years. And now I sort of understand the value of that. I've got a following on social media and Twitter now because of I guess I'm an activist now. Somebody asked me if I was political, and I was saying, well, yeah, I am now, I guess, because I can speak with some convictions about living in Ukraine and being in Ukrainian military and being in the Russian prison system. Well, it's a system, but, it's nothing we're sort of familiar with. So, and that's where I'm at currently at the moment. I've written a book about my exploits.
It's a good book. Everyone should buy it now.
Tremendous book. It really is.
It's almost as good as all the books I've written. But that aside, you should definitely buy this one. I listened to it on audiobook. I thought it's excellent. So you should. And it's got a new cover. Is this a second edition?
So it's a paperback cover, and there's obviously the hardback cover has got me on the front of it. I think spread the bets probably, and it's just been looking like it's going to be made into a film. So we're. It's very interesting time, at the moment. So
do you get to choose who
no,
you?
I keep winding up. I keep winding up Aiden Haslin and said we're going to get Danny DeVito to play him.
Do you know what I did? I approached the makers of the film and I said, look, I will offer myself to play Sean if you want. I do have MS. I'm not.
Way your usual thing.
But they turned me down. They said, look, we really because you're almost perfect, but they just said I was too good looking, and it was just like I was a bit gutted because I thought that was my film.
You could play John Sweeney. We'll stick a little orange beanie on your head. You could do that.
You could play John Harding. Actually, it'd be good John Harding, I think.
Yeah. Let's get Kristaps to introduce himself.
Hello. First of all, wow, nice to see another Hammers fan here. Come on, you audience.
Go away. That's two of us then.
Yep,
give over.
I'm from Latvia. Currently, I am in Ludza, Latvia, 22 kilometers from the Russian border. So, in case something happens, it's going to be
lucky
right
you.
over.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, you can almost spit on them from there.
I'm a journalist. I've also been to reporting from Ukraine a couple of times. I run the Eastern Border podcast, and now I've also started my own YouTube channel. I'm a historian by education, and I've also written for Foreign Policy magazine, literally explaining the Russian prison culture and why, for example, Institute for Study of War, when Prigozhin was alive, they just tend to ignore everything that he said in this fenya, this slang of the culture, which meant that they made some bad decisions. But yeah, I've been active and trying to explain how it was like to live in the Soviet Union since 2013. I accidentally started the genre of podcasting in my whole country. And then people just started asking questions. I moved on, and now I'm now working on my PhD about this whole prison culture thing and its impact on the Russian society and culture and all this stuff. So yeah, and I live literally in the middle of nowhere in the deep swamp, literally next to the Russian border. But yeah, I've been a couple of times to I think it was 4 times that I went to Ukraine. The last time I was there was just before I got married. And I went there just before the liberation of Kherson. That was my last trip there. But it's going to happen next year. Just that my wife is saying that I should probably, get our house in order. And as we just got married, that's why we're here. I'm very, very much participating into all this autumn harvest action. As you can see, if you've been clicking the Eastern Border thing, yeah, that's my people, which I'm very happy for. Recently, I've been, I'm not used to being in front of camera. So I mostly did everything in audio. I just recently started doing things on YouTube, so I might be a bit awkward here in case of whatever. But very much nice to be here and take a look at everything that's going on here. Yeah,
absolutely fantastic to have you here. And we'll have a
Eastern
common
border,
enemy, don't we?
So just to give an update, 8,667. So that's your one, the Eastern Border. Yeah, so that's phenomenal. Silicon Curtain almost nudging into the 7,000s. Thank you so much to those who have supported ATP Geopolitics.
I hope that the Silicon Curtain gets everything in order. I'm going to support you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very generous. But yeah, if we can top out as many of these campaigns as possible and hit the overall pot. I know in particular the brigade that I'm fundraising for, the 93rd.
extraordinarily effective group of warriors, and the lack of vehicle, if it's making their survivability and effectiveness less, then I feel a certain sort of desperation to get this done. Sean, I mean, how important are these vehicles? You'll know from first-hand experience and from being obviously into Dnipro, which is it's been hit hard the last couple of months. I mean, how important is this kind of equipment and getting it to Ukraine?
I mean, it's extremely important. We donated our own car. My wife donated her car of 15 years to the military. We didn't take a penny for it. We just donated and bought a new one. I mean, it is really important. I mean, they come in. They're always constantly the drone. You've seen the drone. I've heard you talk about the drone problem. It's advanced so much since even when I was fighting in Mariupol in the last 2 or 3 years. And we were talking about this the other day, how, the drones were attacking individual vehicles at the start, and now they're attacking individuals. It's like, it's moved on from just attacking vehicles and certain key Russian,
targets,
equipment targets. So that's the word I'm looking for, targets. So it's now attacking, individual people, which just shows you how many more drones there are. So going back to what you said, they're vitally important. I mean, there are some areas on the front lines you can't actually get to with a 4x4. It's a very difficult terrain, especially this time of year as it starts to move into winter, where, some parts are getting snow, sleet, ice, 4 feet of snow, -30. It's exceptionally cold and important. We use our vehicles to CASEVAC people from the front lines, their ambulances, their vans, and so they're essentially, extremely important for a good, solid 4x4 truck to obviously work with the troops on the ground.
And the irony of Medvedchuk, just to go a little bit of a sort of, quite a serious tangent here. You were swapped for one of the Kremlin's most significant assets in Ukraine, a Ukrainian oligarch, but who is very much aligned with the Kremlin and Putin. But in the UK, one of Nigel Farage's former associates, who they now pretend had nothing to do with their parties and they don't even know him, which of course is ludicrous because there's plenty of photographic evidence. And this guy was in all three of the pop-up populist parties. He's just been convicted and most likely will get a custodial sentence for directly working with Medvedchuk and taking money, bribes, as it's been classed here, to shill for the Kremlin and inject their narratives into the European Parliament. So there's a curious kind of connection there with you being swapped. I just thought I'd sort of highlight that.
I mean, it's something we talk, and your other guest on now, who I follow on his podcast actually, and listen to that quite regularly.
Not
we'll
Mr.
Talk
Pierce.
About it more. No, not Mr. Pierce.
Oh, not Mr. Pierce, obviously not.
Eastern Borders.
There we go.
But I do listen to Mr. Pierce too. I don't want to push somebody, I don't want to push their team, but I do. We do talk. I listen to all of you, to be fair. So, oh my God, you've got to play the PC game already.
No, there's a healthy competition going on here, Shawnee. It's not my usual kind of,
I do. I mean, I talk about it now. I just talked about it with Midas Touch, the American outlet, where they filmed me off camera having a rant. They put it on, I think it's 5.9 million viewers in America.
Nice. That's a really good reach, mate.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really good footage of me just going to town on. It's deeper than that. It's not just Farage, the Russian money. It's Tenant Media. It's Rumble. It's the advertising that RT Russia Today does on the X platform. It's who owns these platforms that pushes out the Russia Today content. They're the ones that are obviously anti-Ukrainian. And then you realize you dig a bit deeper, it's about money. And then you dig a bit deeper and it's all Trump's cronies who are. And then who's that? Nigel Farage is the greatest Trump admirer, the copycat king, the guy who's like the British version of MAGA. It's all linked to money and advertising revenues. And that's where it starts to get messy and sticky.
And usually Steve Bannon has his grubby little hands in it somewhere along the line as well.
I don't want to get myself sued, but I don't.
It's not just.
Don't get us sued. Don't get us sued. Please, I don't have legal cover.
See, the thing is, it's not just the obvious candidates, because you might know that we had to expel Dodge from Latvia due to other things, and that was because, well, they were warned a bunch of times that talking about our boys in the trenches when they're recovering to Russian troops kind of looks really bad, and they made a bunch of errors all along, and basically we tried not to expel them very, 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 very hard, but then in court they not only didn't take a translator, an interpreter for them, they just chose to speak in Latvian court in pure Russian, and at that point we were like, we don't want to expel you because you're opposition journalist, but please could you show just a tiny bit of respect for Latvian law? And they were like, nope.
Well, that's the old Russian liberal imperialist, isn't it? And the Ukrainian phrase that Russian liberalism ends at the Ukrainian border. Well, it clearly ends at the Baltic border as well.
Here's something that Sean was kind of referencing. So this is X, owned by Elon Musk. So when you start up a new profile on X, it suggests you follow people, but it's not particularly random here, I don't think. So the 3 suggestions for this new account: 1, SpaceX. Okay, I can understand that from his point of view. Mario Norfal, who is a real disingenuous right-wing influencer that I think is not good. And then RT. Literally a banned Russian state disinformation peddler is what is algorithmically, purposefully suggested for you if you start up a new profile on X. That tells you all you need to know about Elon Musk, in my
Can I just jump in there on that? I push that because I know I solely pick a lot on Russia Today, because and this is where, I'm not against free speech or other media or different views, but I am against people who were sitting in front of me who were with the FSB, with the guys who were torturing me, electrocuting me. And it was RT and FSB, the FSB were working in conjunction with each other. I wouldn't have been like this if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. And the trial by public opinion I had long before I ever got to a Russian courtroom was really solely geared up to portray me as a Nazi, a mercenary, and a terrorist. And Russia Today were a key instruments in that. The truth is, I never left the country I had legal status in. I'm married to a Ukrainian. I'd been there some years before. I'd never invaded a foreign country to topple the democratically elected government. And yet they still portrayed me as a mercenary, a Nazi, and a terrorist all over their media long before I even got to a so-called trial. So that's where that sits really uncomfortably. And I learned that there is a Russian judiciary system, but it's all the statements are taken under duress. You're getting electrocuted, starved, beaten. You're taken away to deal with the propaganda, and the very people they're smiling and joking with are the guys that are beating you up in the black site and torturing you in the black site. Tell me when to stop. But I do get on my soapbox when we talk about RT, because I watch them every day on social media, going into the living rooms of America and portraying, what's the latest one I did? I did one, Peterson, I can't remember his name, but he's there on the front lines in the occupied territories, broadcasting that into the homes of American living rooms. Yet he didn't mention Mariupol, the slaughter of over 25,000 people that are witnessed, the children, the women, the Nazi-style filtration camps. So, he didn't mention that. He was just like, poor Russians, they're on the front, they're doing it. And I just like, oh my God, I've got to do something about this. And that's where YouTube came in. That's where social media came in. This is where I'm just like, this is crazy.
Is that OAN guy that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they're not a news organization. I mean, like unfortunately, the Russian Orthodox Church as well, which is deeply embedded with the army and is also used and has been used on occasion to tell people or persuade people who've actually deserted from the Russian army, persuaded them to go back into the meat grinder. They're not a spiritual organization, and RT is not a media organization. It is an extension of the FSB and the GRU. It's an extension of the intelligence services. That's pure and simple.
It is. Sorry, I'll let you
The thing is that they have a very strange relationship with truth, that especially when it comes to the justice system and everything. It's because, for starters, the whole idea that Russia acts like a normal country is, in my opinion, flawed, because you have to look at it from a religious experience. And I'm not joking here. It's just that in Russia, if you think about it, when Putin says that, everyone else is gonna, just die, but he'll go to heaven, yeah, you should take that seriously. It's just the same as he uses all the slang and everything. If you remember, they called themselves the Third Rome, but now remember how the Second Rome worked with Byzantium, where the emperor was the head of the church. He wants to build the Third Rome. Not only Russia is not a modern nation state, it doesn't want to be a modern nation state. It wants to be the Third Rome in every possible sense, including the religious one. So, and I've been looking through all these, I call them vatniks, the very much fanatical people who support Putin for ideological reasons, right? And they all basically treat it as Russia being divine. It's a divine entity through which their czar is some sort of holy object. They funnel it all through that idea. That's the one aspect why they're not obsessed with actual truth and facts, because they already view the world from this skewed viewpoint. And secondly, with the Russian justice system, well, I'm a historian. I've studied Soviet history. Currently, the conviction rate, if you get to court, how likely you are to get convicted of your crime and be declared guilty, yeah, that's higher than Stalin's era. In Stalin's era, there was a larger percentage of people who are deemed not guilty than now. In Stalin's era, it was 90. In Stalin's era, it was 98%. Right now, it's 99.2%. Yeah,
I can believe that.
It's just that weird. And at the same time, recently they have a bunch of problems because, well, for starters, the people who are fanatical on that side, they somehow separate the Russian government and what's going on with all their corruption from their idealized state of Russia as a divine empire over there, which is some sort of absolute good. And then they have massive question marks, profit somehow. And that's a weird aspect of all of this situation. It's just that it's not like, it's not, RT is pushing this in a very interesting way, but it's to the point where even the people who are on their side, right, they're not viewed as genuine assets. So if you're looking at all these people who right now are on this pro-Putin side in the United States and other parts of the world, well, yeah, they're not seen as valuable agents. They'll be thrown out at the very first opportunity. As soon as some sort of local governor will be able to sell them out once this whole thing gets messed over, and as soon as someone will find out a way how to sell these people who are now receiving Kremlin's money out to get himself off of prison, that's going to happen instantly. They're going to be first to go.
I mean, the Third Rome is a fascinating idea, and just a quick sort of take on that. I mean, a friend of mine, Konstantin, talked about that. Now, we have Dugin and others talk a lot about the Third Rome, but we have to look at it and say, well, they're looking at Rome in a particular way, just as they looked at the British Empire in a particular way, a mixture of envy and loathing at the same time, and a sense that that's a peer competitor and want to be like that. We have to understand.
I can talk a lot about this, because they still to this day, because I watch Maxim Kalashnikov, who's a friend of and he has all sorts of crazy friends there, and I like the best of them is Yuri Yevich, the person who runs military first aid courses for people. He has a massive organization, and he continues to blame London for all the dirty tricks and blames you for everything. The evil
bastards. I
find this really interesting, actually.
I'll just quickly get this little point in before I forget, because I'm old and when they look at these imperial constructs, when they look at Rome, they're not taking the mechanisms that made Rome great or Britain great. They're not looking at all aspects of it. And Rome, of course, the pioneer of mass rule of law and mass, all sorts of sort of political ends there. It's not just about brute force and power and control, but that's the bit that Russia's looking at. When they describe themselves as the Third Rome, they're not looking at the entirety of the mechanism. They're just looking at the outward, crude aspects of power and control. That's just, I want to inject that in there. Same with the British Empire. They don't want to copy all the, the fiddly bits about banning slavery and the fiddly bits about, democracy and institutions and fair play and all the other bits and bobs that sort of coincidentally exist at the same time. Jonathan.
I completely literally forgotten what I was going to say.
That's because you're bloody old as well, isn't it?
Well, no, it's
It's
it's my MS. Like I really struggle with.
You had to throw that in there. Make me feel like
I can't take the piss out of me now.
Make me feel like a piece of shit. Though.
You bastard! You've been so disableist. Oh my god! What? Chris Steps was talking about something, and there was what was it going to be? What were you talking about? Anyway, I had something amazing.
British Empire. We sort of
tangentially, for some reason, the hatred of British Empire.
That was it. I've remembered. Thank you. So I find it fascinating that Russia still really hates the UK to the point where when things happen, it's like this was a British fault, and sometimes it is. Like sometimes we've helped a little bit with naval drones or something like that, and you think, yeah, okay, we might have played a little part in that. But very often they're like, oh, the British have done this, and the Russians, and I almost said this earlier, like the Russians have this view of themselves. So, you know, when you've met Russian, I don't know if you guys have been on holiday much, say in Europe, but the Russians have got a bad rep, kind of like how the British used to have a rep in like the Mediterranean or whatever, in Turkey. Russians on holiday are seen as this, they think they own everything and blah, blah, blah. And they've generally got really bad rep. And so I was going to ask earlier, do you think Putin's got this sense of Russian superiority that is kind of almost ingrained into the Russian public through decades of state-controlled television and narratives put into them? But actually, does he believe that himself, that actually we are generally greater than really we are?
I think he does. I think he does. I have an answer to this, and you have to blame Alexander Solzhenitsyn for this. He literally got this idea from late Solzhenitsyn, who was very much into this idea of this imperial czar. He was against the Soviet Union, yes, but he was very much pro-Russian imperialism. He was very much supportive of this idea that Russia needs a strong czar and that about this Russian exceptionalism. And he actually told this to Putin. He was a deep admirer of Putin in the later days, and he endorsed him massively. So I think that at least if he doesn't believe it, then he understands how acting that way certainly can benefit him in the long run, and in total can pull his interests together. Because when we're talking about what Putin genuinely believes, well, that's a whole different topic, much harder than just we have to look at this from the perspective of both what benefits him and what he believes because he can't do otherwise if he is to take on this role. It's a complex matter, which is why, again, I'm trying to do a PhD on this whole matter. So
I think it's connected. So this idea that Russia is this great state is possibly kind of from that period of the Cold War, and the idea that Russia still keeps blaming the UK. Like, I love it as a Brit, where I've seen the decline of the British Empire type thing. Our standing in the world isn't like, and I could talk to you about Brexit, and I could talk to you about the history of the UK, but we aren't like the powers we once were. Although our intelligence services are pretty effective, and they punch well above their weight, and there are many ways that the UK punches above its weight, even economically to some degree still. But I don't think we're the same nation that Russia still thinks we are, and Putin still thinks we are, and we keep getting blamed. It's like, oh, the British did this. It's like, yeah, I'd love to say that we were responsible for that, but I don't think we are. And I think there's this like sense of reality that is still in the Cold War, where Russia still thinks they're up here, and they still think Britain's up here. And actually, that's like 60 years away, mate.
I'm sitting here biting my lip. Sorry, I didn't mean. I was sitting here biting my lip because I was interviewed by them. I was literally stunned. It was like, you're MI6. No, I'm not. I'm a Stasi Matros in the Ukrainian military. And they were like, no, you're James Bond. No. And I started to realize a lot of the gear I had was quite Gucci gear. It was putting me to another level. A lot of things that Ukrainian soldiers probably couldn't afford. But there's absolute fear of the fact that I was James Bond, an SAS. What are you doing here? You're British military intelligence. All the way through my capture was to the point where I was being assessed by a psychiatric woman a nurse who was looking into my sanity before I went to trial, who was telling me what it was like to live in the UK, to telling me, how we, what was, asking stupid questions like, what was your, how do you feel about working for a black person? And I'd be like, what? I said, I'm from central London. I mean, I'm like, my last boss was Indian. I don't know. I knew exactly what she was doing, but this was all going towards like portraying me as this Nazi. They'd already predetermined, even through through their evaluation of me what they thought I was before I'd even got to trial, before I'd even opened my mouth, that I was this Nazi, oversexed, liberal James Bond from the UK who was just captured in Mariupol and who's a mercenary Nazi and a terrorist. And they are. They're just solely pushing that agenda of that we are this Anglo-Saxons, they called us, and how Russia win the war. And that was just going at me 24 hours a day.
Yeah, interesting. Just on that level. Sorry,
it's a kind of cosplay version of the 19th century, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Russia isn't the power it was then either.
But their excuse is that they are not the powerhouse they used to be. They're not run by these very competently, again, good czar, bad boyars all the time, and then they'll conquer Ukraine. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Profit. All the problems go away miraculously, instantly. That's that idea. And this imperialism, it shines everywhere, because that's what I do. That's what I do for a living. I read through all these people. And today I would like to, by the way, if possible, I'd like to bring you out an interesting quote, because I find it very relevant to this conversation. And what's going on here is that I read a channel by Vladimir Kvachkov. He wrote the Manifesto of the Russian World, which I have translated, and I have to figure out how to squeeze that into my political science degree, because he wrote the whole new manifesto, which currently is much more active amongst the people who are these, who lead these various fighting groups. He was very popular among the fighters of Espanyol. Before that, got destroyed and all this stuff. And here, for example, is what he says about the future of Russia, which is to show how they think about their own empire and restoration of this. And this was just posted. This is just posted about today, because this is his post where he memorizes the great events in history from the past. Quote, on September 29th/October the 10th, by the new style, 1710, Russian troops liberated the ancient Russian city of Reval, now Tallinn, from the Swedes. But this was not its first name. The ancient Russian name of the city was Kolyvan. It was first mentioned under this name in Russian chronicles in 1223, when Prince Yaroslav came from his brother in Novgorod with his entire domain and went to Kolyvan and conquered the entire land of the Chud. It was known by this name many times in Russian sources until the 18th century. The first time it was mentioned in other historical documents under the name Kolyvan was in a work by an Arab geographer written in 1154. The name of the city of Kolyvan is used in letters from Queen Elizabeth of England, addressed to Tsar Fyodor Ivanovich in 1587 and in 1589. You're British people, which is why I like to bring this up, because, again, I have no idea what she wrote in those letters, as well as to Boris Godunov. Kolyvan comes from two Russian words, kola, fence, and the name Ivan. That's Ivan's fence. And now the oldest part of present-day Tallinn bears the Slavic name Vyshegorod. The second liberation of Kolyvan is coming. Yeah, these are.
It's a steaming pile of nonsense. I mean, all of it.
Of course, it is. But but this is what's going on because this isn't read by Putin's propaganda machine, because no one on that side of the front really, if something is shown on Solovyov, that's meant from Moscow, Petersburg population who don't know anything about this. This is for the real soldiers of the war, which is what their next plans are. At the same time, they complain that Zelensky is a terrorist because he now wants to cut off Belgorod and Kursk from electricity, disregarding the fact that they've been trying to freeze Kiev for all these years now, and everything, and that they literally just sanity and coherent thought doesn't go well with these people. They just want to find someone to blame, and that's the next part of the plan.
I mean, don't mention that Belgorod was a ethnically Ukrainian-speaking area, and
it's fun. Like, one thing that I would like to mention here, which I've mentioned in other interviews, is the fact that Russian imperialism and the fact that they consider Ukrainians to be the same as Russians kind of saved the Baltics in a way during the Soviet era. It's because, well, when they tried to Russify us, and we're a much smaller people, like Latvia is slightly below 2 million people. Estonia is even smaller. When they tried to Russify us, they sent a bunch of Belarusians and Ukrainians in as well. My wife's family comes from my wife's family. They're Poles who lived around Belarusian borders. So when these people were sent in to Russify us, well, the Russians were quite scared, because Belarusians and Ukrainians, they actually learned our language, and because of Russian chauvinism, they made more Russian chauvinistic mistakes. It's errors piled up on errors. But even here, even when they try to justify this, even here they refer to the British, the Queen Elizabeth letter somewhere sent over there in documents which they have never read, because yet again they don't speak in English. I'm now working on an episode where I'm going to explore where they get their sources about life in the West and especially the United States and Great Britain, because they must get their sources somewhere. But then I found out that I guess they rely on translations from sites worse than whatever Alex Jones is posting. It's a field of research that I'm going through, and that's why. Look, if what I'm saying sounds like a bit of a disjointed mess, it's because, well, I'm reading through this disjointed mess and trying to make some coherent sense of it and turning into some academical paper. This is why I moved here, because at least it's quiet here and I don't go as insane as I probably would.
So, just a quick reminder, we're here to buy trucks, essentially, but to also have some great conversations along the way. But we need to get these trucks. I'm particularly crowdsourcing here for the 93rd Brigade, a fantastically effective unit. Right, we've just broken through the 7,000. We got to make it up to the 8, 9, 10. This is the target. We want to sort of break through, catch up with Mr. Johnny Pierce, although you're also racing ahead there. So that's it's a moving target.
Take that, Fink. But anyway, sorry. I mean, this is really good that everyone's contributing to a wonderful cause for all of us, including Silicon Kern and Eastern Border.
So insincere, it really is. But talking into declaring war, I'm gonna harp back because I've got a little episode sort of going live in parallel with this. Really, the Russian assets and agents, not just in the British political ecosystem and the media and so on, and a sort of normalization that's going on that may not even be influenced by Russia at all, but also in the European Union. We hear views that only the tip of the iceberg has been touched when you have Tenet Media, which you mentioned earlier, and others. We're aware now of some of these influence operations, but this really is just the tip of the iceberg, it seems to me. And there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of will to properly tackle this. Is this different in the Baltics? Is this different in Ukraine? Because, of course, Ukraine has realized that these assets and agents are an existential risk to survival, and it must be the case in the Baltic countries as well.
Oh, well, it's been rough for us. We have banned a lot of people who are spreading fake news. We also have a really strong press laws, because I'm a member of Latvian Journalists Association, which also is, you have to be a member of some journalist association to even get accreditation to work in Ukraine, which a bunch of media who are often quoted as very reliable aren't, such, by the way, as Meduza. Meduza are not members of Latvian Journalists Association, even though they've been here for years. And they're not as reliable as a lot of people tend to think, because they have their own shady things. But also there are some people who make a website called Baltic News Network, which are closely related with Piotr Aven, and their trade association, which they claim to be a part of, is the British one. Of course, they're not members of it. Again, we're trying to deal with this stuff, but someone posting in Austria, claiming to be Latvian media, it's a lot of effort here. But at least right now we're doing pretty well, and especially here in the border regions. Over here is the regions the most, where the most Russians live, and we've taken on a policy where right now a lot of people here in my area say that even if they're Russian speakers, because again this region has always been the most multicultural of all the Baltics. Oh, sorry, it's my electricity here. I still haven't fixed it, so if this flickers, then sorry about that one. It's just that over here people have a saying that Riga is far away, but Moscow is further still. They have no interest in this Russian domination. So over here, at least, people are taking this whole thing seriously. Because again,
haven't you? Sorry to interrupt, but haven't you? Well, not you personally, but Latvian government has introduced rules about speaking Latvian language now, not the Russian language. And Russian diaspora communities have to pass or jump through certain hoops in order to basically in order not to show themselves willing to integrate more and not willing to just sit in their own kind of Russianness. And actually you've sent some back, or at least you haven't renewed visas on.
We're trying to, but sending old 70-year-old ladies back is a bad look all over the place. We've sent a few people back, but a lot of them integrate. But over here, I'm not gonna like my neighbor passed the exam, but is not like he's gonna do watch Latvian talk everyday life. And over here, there's been a big split here since previously Russians like to miss everyone. Like everyone who used to use Russian as their everyday language here, they were bunched up in this Russianness. And now if you speak with a Belarusian person or Ukrainian person and call them a Russian, then that's a big deal. That's a massive difference. And also the younger generations who are like 25 and below, well, they no longer speak Russian here. I was born in 1989. I'm 36 now, and I'm one of the very last generations over here who actually speaks fluent Russian and reads it. I'm coming from a Latvian family. In my childhood, if you were Latvian, then you automatically sort of learned Russian because it was forced down on you for a while. Right now, it's just that, well, it's a complex situation. And of course, in the 90s, our politicians also mangled integration policies by a lot, and I've criticized that on my podcast. It could have been much better. We could have done a much better job with integration with everyone here, but we didn't. And now it's on my generation to deal with the consequences, obviously. So it is what it is. But over here, currently, people are trying to find their own national identities and not just, if previously, before the war started, pre-2022, they were happy to be just mushed in with Russians. Even then, like starting 2014, it was like less and less, but still. Then right now, well, everyone's trying to integrate as much as possible, and there's a lot of programs going on here. Because again, we already, as soon as the whole conflict started, over here, everyone understood that, yeah, if we hadn't joined the EU or NATO, then we'd be in Ukraine's place right now. That's a very much a common understanding here.
The Baltics are one of the biggest arguments for NATO's success as a defensive alliance. They have not been attacked by Russia, but goodness, you can imagine they would have been. Can I just change the subject just for a very brief moment? Donald Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize today, and that, I don't know.
It's tragedy, Jonathan.
I, for one, am writing to my MP to try and get this overturned because how ridiculous it is. Anyway, honestly, this is how cult-like the Republican Party has become in the United States. So Donald Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. That's why I'm introducing a resolution today that will honor him with the Nobel Peace Prize. So you've got like Republican lawmakers that are going to introduce a resolution that gives him the Nobel Peace Prize from, I don't know, just from the American point of view, something made up.
Doesn't that defeat the object of the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, what
to a point?
What defeats the object? I did a video on this morning. My first video was on this topic, and like the idea that you give you could remotely consider giving an award to someone that is based on a moral evaluation of who they are and that they have done some moral good for the world, to someone who is going around saying, I deserve this, I should get this. Like in moral philosophy, there's this idea that if you're truly going to be moral and do a moral act, you should do it silently. You shouldn't really talk about it, because then it's all about you rather than all about the act. Like even, and I'm an atheist, right? But in the Bible, Jesus said, if you're going to pray, do it quietly over there. Don't shout about how wonderful you are at praying. Oh, check me out, I'm freaking praying. Like, it's virtue signaling. So the idea that you have a guy running around saying, I deserve this award for being awesome, for being really kind, right? Essentially, that's what you can boil it down to. I deserve this for being really kind. This is me. It's all about me. I think that automatically invalidates you from getting a Nobel Peace Prize.
I should have been the lead striker for West Ham. It never happened.
Yeah, of course.
And there's other people that thought I shouldn't because my football was pretty bad. But it's along the same lines, It's like
ridiculous.
I'm now going to put in a resolution that everybody should say I should be a striker for West Ham. I'm sure West Ham would have something to say about that.
Only if I can be the goalkeeper.
Yeah, mate, you're in. We'll put a resolution in for that.
Nice.
It's ridiculous that you can. That you can be so narcissistic and then get really I don't know. It's just everything annoys me about politics going on at the moment in the United States. But the idea that you should consider him for that award, and then the idea that you could have people that are so inside the cult that they have to virtue signal their own kind of allegiance to the cult by saying we should have a resolution that he does actually get the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's just whatever.
I love that. I was just watching these little clips that come up. They're hilarious. I put something on my Twitter feed the other day, or the X feed the other day, and somebody said the only thing he's invaded is Portland, Oregon.
So like, have you seen
that?
Have you seen what's been going on there? Like, while you guys have been talking, I've been seeing the phenomenon that is. Do you guys know about the Portland frog?
Oh yeah, I saw.
Right. So have you seen the Portland frog? So the best one is that I've got to find it, where the Portland frog is advancing and the military are retreating, and then he starts twerking at the. I'm going to find it to you, but anyway, now there are all sorts of people turning up with the Portland frog costumes, and now you're getting like even more costumes. So the idea that Portland is burning to the ground, right, when the reality is you got a bunch of liberal hippies like twerking in inflatable suits, like it's just
it's
love
the correct way to fight this garbage.
Yeah,
though,
yeah,
isn't it?
I love that. I actually think
the right way. Don't get violent. Don't protest. Just fight it with mascots and
I love it.
Frogs, and that's the way you have to fight this stupidity, and then it's going to backfire on Trump sooner or later.
Here's one. I've got to. Oh no, it's not that one yet. That's caught it at the end. Here it is. Right, you've got to watch this. This is good. This is how it should be. So you have let's full screen this. You have.
I love this.
You got everyone else like retreating as a Portland frog, but it's what he does at the blue. Assuming it's a he. It's what this frog does at the line here. It's just like when he's like, yeah, you've got back. Yeah. Now check me out. It's just the best.
That's brilliant. It's along the lines of the Pikachu, isn't it? At the Georgian riots. And I think that's the way to fight. You just turn up in mascots and they just look a bunch of idiots, don't they, at the end of the day?
Why they're retreating? It's like, this guy's unhinged. Oh, this is scary.
And of course, the theory is what Trump is trying to do there. I know this isn't to do with Ukraine, but what Trump is trying to do there is foment a riot. He's like, he's inventing a riot that doesn't exist, and there's a discussion to be had over whether he really knows that nothing's going on in Portland, and actually he's part of this, or whether he's being fed stuff about the 2020 BLM riots in Portland, where he's seeing footage of stuff that happened 5 years ago and thinking that's happening now. But either way, he's saying Portland is burning down. No shops shops aren't open. They're boarding up their windows with plywood, and it's like. The reality is you got a bunch of frogs twerking, and just like, it is so, but what he wants is to send the army in to then create a riot so that then he can institute martial law. And then you can imagine that there's going to be no elections in the midterms or something like that. Like, it's far more cynical than we're giving.
I said the same thing on that Midas Touch clip.
Midas Touch,
It's something exactly similar to that. I said the guy Trump just walked into a door. How the hell does he know, if he doesn't know what's going on in his own country? How the hell does he know what's going on in Ukraine? And you could tell.
I made this argument yesterday. Yeah,
who he sent. I mean, Steve Shitkoff. He just turned up and he had no diplomatic experience whatsoever. Clearly inept. A whole meeting in Alaska was possibly, I don't know, allegedly arranged through a mistake. And you've got other guys who show up who have had no political experience with Russia. I went on as much to say in February, did a video, put it out there saying, don't hold too much optimism. You only have to spend 5 minutes in Ukraine to know that the Americans have turned up and they have not got a clue what's going on. And I said that in February. Don't have too much optimism for peace, because it just ain't going to happen. And look at where we are now. He's backed out, walked away. It's all gone to...
Well, Steve, like the idea that Steve Witkoff turns up to Moscow on his own to have a meeting with Putin and all of his cronies, doesn't have a translator. So he didn't even get an embassy translator. So he turns up not being able to speak Russian. Then they give him a translator who now we know was a kind of Russian FSB woman. And you're like, and and then are we surprised that he comes out and regurgitates Russian talking points to Tucker Carlson? It's like, this is absolute insanity.
It is insanity. I bang my head against a bit wall because like I said, I've never been political. My audience has grown solely because I've become more of an activist, more vocal. I'm not tied to anything now. I'm not, as Ukraine, the latest sort of said, I'm not really tied to the military, so I can be more vocal on both sides. But I am a Ukrainian patriot. I do believe in sovereignty and freedom. They don't do everything right, and I'm quite quick to jump on that too. When
no country does.
Debate, no, they don't. But that's why we're different, because you only have to see what Russia Today pushes out on X platform, which I try and send out to my audience to show them, look at what's coming out daily. And that's reaching out to the Southern Hemisphere, pumping it out. They are Trump this, anti-Trump, anti-Britain. Britain's caused the war. NATO's the problem. NATO expand. And that's going out 50 times a day on X. And that's being promoted on their platform. So he's winning over that. So and now I've watched my wife lose her job because USA aid has been pulled. That's all the local projects, humanitarian projects. That's all the American soft power gone. Who do you think that benefits? Russia. That's the first thing Elon did when he came in, was take out all the humanitarian aid and stop all the projects. Those projects are holding those frontline areas together. They are the fabric, the stitching holding those together. Those frontline areas need that income from those USAID humanitarian projects that happen. They can stay, they can get an income, they can work on local projects to develop and fix Ukraine, demining through to first aid, through to whatever your talents are. You're able to stay in those really war-torn areas and get an income. First thing Elon did was pull it out. Now you're putting pressure on people. Now they're moving away from those, trying to find work. Projects are cancelled. So I've watched this firsthand, and now you're losing that, even that soft power that America had here, where you've got Ukrainians close to front lines going, they've got no confidence in the American administration, none at all. Not because they're not thankful for what they have got, but when you hear, like you said, Trump regurgitating Kremlin narratives, I'd practically suggested, even saying that Zelensky's the problem. And then he's lying. I get furious. I mean, that's enough to drive me onto the internet. And Jake Rowe said, just get a camera and do it. And I just went, fuck it. I'm going to do it. And I have no media experience whatsoever.
So I'm famous for doing, not famous, like my audience know that I will rant on a regular basis, and it's not performative. I can't help myself. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere. I'm just reporting something, then it goes on to something else, and then I'm like, and this is what, and I can feel myself getting worked up, and the anger just like, I had to check myself because I'm like, I remember what Darth Vader said. And I don't want to be going over to the dark side. Anger leads to so on and so forth. But it just I just get so frustrated that we are living in a time period where either over stupidity or over ignorance or over actually evilness seems to be prevalent in politics, and I'm seeing, although we talk a lot about Trump and his administration, actually there are elements of this in the UK. Sorry, not in the UK. Well, there is actually with Reform UK, but there's elements of this around Europe, and I'm really, really worried about the future of democracy, given the prevalence of support for Russia, which you would think surely you can't support Russia, but no, it is something that is happening. I think, like, here's an example, right? I was going to talk about this at some point today, but the 3 AfD lawmakers, so these are German on the far right politics there, but they are gaining in popularity, particularly in the East. 3 AfD lawmakers from Saxony-Anhalt attended Putin's 73rd birthday celebration at the Russian embassy in Berlin, organized by the pro-Kremlin magazine Compact. The event praised Putin as a patriot, and AfD leaders later said the MPs acted independently. It's like, so it's just ridiculous. Like,
it is ridiculous. I've listened to you rant about. I've just finished this point where I've listened to Jonathan rant about this thing about the big one I go is free speech.
Yeah.
So it's incitement, but if you challenge it, it's I'm entitled to my free speech. That isn't free speech. Like the woman the Ukrainian who fled to America to avoid the war and was killed on the subway. And we watch, Russians and American YouTubers using that image to blame the Democrats for her death.
Yeah.
And I thought that was disgusting. I thought that was absolutely. And somebody said to me on the reply back, well, it's free speech. We can do that. I said, that's not free speech. Where's her free speech? Where is her?
Or it's like if you're fine,
image?
okay, but it's fine to no. I would go down the route of that's fine. You can say that, but then don't start getting hypocritical. So in the UK, we've just had like Gary Neville, who's a former footballer, England footballer, came out and said something about flags and angry white men and blah blah blah. And you had the people that spent 6 months arguing that we should be able to say what we like, free speech, free speech, free speech. Gary Neville says something they don't like, and then suddenly they're like, there's a massive poll to get him. To get him sacked from Sky Sports. And you're like, hang on, like 6 months ago, you were just telling me that we should all be allowed to say what we like. But it turns out free speech only works for you. That it only allows you to say what you like. But as soon as someone else says something that you don't like, you want them sacked from there.
Stone him!
That's the cancel culture you were whinging about. You are part of it. You are the biggest. Whatever. I'm sorry.
Well, look. Also, you do have to acknowledge that Gary Neville, as a Man United fan, there are some problems with that already. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Let's not laugh at Man United. They're beyond laughable right now, especially after I watched their game with Grimsby.
So there's only one football club for anyone that really cares, and that's Pompey. So and everything else is irrelevant. So all of you lot can go and do one.
Who, Jonathan? Who?
Portsmouth Football Club. Pompey. Play up. Pompey. Play. No, we're not. Okay.
No,
anyway, for our international audience here that have absolutely no interest in English football, tough luck.
Soccer to those Americans.
Well, Phil's joining me, and Phil, I don't know if Phil's a football fan or not, but if he's not, then we'll sit this one out on the reserves bench.
I just wanted to quickly add to what Pierce says about the frustrations and all this stuff. Well, I've learned to manage. I've learned to manage this because I have seen so much of their insanity that I have just somehow absorbed this, and I deal with this by being extremely snarky. That's the only way that I can do this. I have started making extremely snarky jokes on my show because, well, some people state that I should be a bit more, cold and professional. But these are the subject matters. If you care about them, you can't really. Then it sort of becomes sanitized, and then it seems a bit less real in a sense, because if the other side gets to weaponize all sorts of emotions and anger and just spew out lies without anything rational, then you have to fight back somehow. Yeah. And also one thing that I've noticed is that I deal with those trolls I've banned from Twitter since 2023 because of Russian trolls and mods and everything. However, on other social media platforms, I'm not Russian trolls don't attack me at all because, I read Russian and I read their Patnik Telegram channels where they gather all this stuff. So then I just, I don't argue with them. I just post their own links, what their media says, often contradicting themselves, and then they sort of go away. So that's how I'm safe. That's how you can fight back against them. I feel.
I did something similar earlier where some Western academic got the hump on Twitter because I was calling Yulia Navalny useless and suggesting they pipe down until their country is defeated, and then they can do what the hell they like. But no, I took exception to that. And how dare I say it? That they're useless and inconsequential and whatever. I say all I have to quote is one of their own countrymen, Mark Fagan, who says exactly the same. Said the same in a recent interview that I did with him. I haven't yet published. He basically says they're not worth. They're about as useful as a chocolate teapot. They are not going to move the dial on anything. Only Ukrainian victory is going to move the dial on anything or trigger any kind of political change or reassessment within Russia itself. The Russian opposition are not in a position to do that, and they don't have the capability to do that. They also know that if they were to go and fully advocate for Russian decolonization, no Russian would ever vote for them either. So it's in Russian, what would you call it? Zamknutый kруг. It's like a closed circle. They're stuck in a position, but that's why we don't have to take them, even vaguely seriously. And they're calling for things that would actively harm. I think the point you took exception to, as I said, if we followed through on what Yulia Navalny was saying and Karamurza, then essentially that would lead to the eradication of more Ukrainians. And how dare you say that? How dare you say that? No, you just follow the logical conclusions. If you lift sanctions against ordinary, innocent Russians, you are directly benefiting the Russian war machine. That leads to the erasure of Ukraine. It's a logical conclusion to make. Whether the person who supports Navalny wants to raise Ukrainians or not, I'm sure they don't. But that's the logical outcome of what they're arguing for. So.
Yeah, it's a pity we lost Nemtsov. I mean, I had my issues with him, but it would have been better than what we have now.
That's why he was killed,
Yeah,
that's exactly why he was killed.
Just for the audience's sake, do you want to let people know who Boris Nemtsov was?
Boris Nemtsov was one of the young reformers of the 90s. He advocated for liberal democracy. He was very anti-Chechen war. For example, he was one of his issues, and I say this from a Russian electorate position, is he was Jewish. So he had some personal foibles, and again, not completely devoid of his own Russian imperialism mentality. But in the end, yes, he was assassinated just off of Red Square, just on the bridge leading to the Kremlin, with his Ukrainian girlfriend, as a matter of fact. She wasn't killed; she was a witness to it. Again, what road would Russia have gone down if Alexander Levin had survived? Putin is such Putin, both a product of Russia and a obvious milestone transitional character in whatever Russia is going to be after they lose this war. So what if it had been Nemtsov? What if it had been Levin? What if it had been, there's some others?
I mean, one thing we can be sure of is almost anyone who got near power would have signed up to some concept of an imperial Russia, whether it is, on the territory of what's recognized as the Russian Federation, or whether it encompasses the wider former USSR. There's a lot of commonality there. Or
they could have done a CIS, but a CIS with a very large stick, and have a bunch of Belaruses out there.
Yeah, but Putin is probably, for those who say, but what if someone worse than Putin came along? Putin is frankly the worst of the worst, and not because of his brutality and because of his stupid ideas. He is the worst of the worst because he's a man with no intelligence. Well, he's intelligent in that he's relatively fluent when he speaks. He's got a big team, and he's not unintelligent, but he's unimaginative. He doesn't have any ideas of his own. All the ideas he's got are stolen from the worst ideas of Russian imperialism of the past. The
dictatorship of law. Remember that?
The dictatorship of law. The dregs of Russian thought, not even stitched together in any coherent fashion. You've got a pastiche of Soviet iconography, Tsarist iconography. It's all stitched together in an absolutely incoherent fashion. Yeah, he's not intelligent. He's not dynamic. He's someone who, he's the accidental Tsar. He's someone who was placed there because he thought he would protect the Yeltsin family and their ill-gotten loot.
I was there. I saw the rise. Yes, I saw the rise. Yeah, I'm not going to get. I promise I won't get on my, as I want to do on my soapbox too much here. But we got to remember, there are a couple things we must remember about Putin when he was rising to power. I think we're going to hunt down Chechen warriors and we'll kill them in the outhouse, let's say. Although he didn't use quite the polite toilet. Yeah. Yes, he didn't use the polite term. I don't know if I can swear, but yes, absolutely. Everybody Don't forget to contribute. So we're going to kill them. Can I swear, Jonathan? A little bit, just this once?
Hopefully, just this once. We'll let you get away with it.
All right, just this once. We're going to hunt down Chechens in the shitter. In the shitter. We're gonna kill him and he's a thug. The man's a thug. I was working for Canadian television at the apartment building bombings. There is no doubt in my mind, but that was orchestrated by Vladimir Putin. I spoke to neighbors who had reported 2 or 3 days prior to the actual explosion that they found guys putting bags of fertilizer, quote unquote, in the basement of buildings. And when they were confronted, militia showed up, and 15 minutes later, badges were exchanged, and those guys were out of there scot-free. That's the kind of man that Vladimir Putin is. I also saw him, and this speaks to maybe his pettiness and his deep insecurity, is I was in Murmansk when the Kursk went down. And I remember very vividly, him going into the sailors' church. There's a church for sailors in Murmansk, because of course that's the location of the Arctic, in the North Sea, the Arctic Sea Fleet. And he was screamed at. He was screamed at because the wives and the mothers of the sailors who were trapped in the Kursk, there was a chance to rescue them using Scottish deep sea rescue vehicles, and Putin didn't allow it for a variety of reasons. But I remember him coming out of that church like a frightened little schoolboy who had just been chastised, and that's who I think he truly
I have two things I'd like to add. First of all, well, the specific shitter that you're referring to is not an everyday outhouse. It refers to the specific one in the prison where all the petukhs or opushcheny or the offended people live. He's referring straight to that thing. And secondly, about the Ryazan sugar, as it's all known in these parts, I will post in the chat. I made an episode back in 2018 explaining all this in detail. So if everyone wants to check that one out, because that's a massive subject matter about how Putin got to power and what was happening on there. That's an audio form. I haven't put this on YouTube yet, but there's just a link. No ads on that.
That's a great one. I've also, if anyone's interested in following up, we've got David Satter and Yuri Felishtinsky on my channel talking about this subject, in great depth, and I think Edward Lucas refers to it as well. But Felishtinsky has a very, I would say, front row seat on this, and is there's a lot of detail in there you won't have heard from other places. And of course, David Satter brings an extraordinary moral judgment onto the whole thing with his long sort of political and journalistic career. If you still don't really, if you think you know Putin, you don't know him until you've got to the bottom of these things, because it shows that there's no depths of callousness to which he won't go to save his own skin, to save his own wealth, to save his own inner circle, but primarily his own skin. And that translates into what we're seeing. 1 million Russians are now estimated to have died, not just, wounded, but actually died. Not that we're too upset about that. But there's no limit to this. There's no limit whatsoever. 2, 3, 4, 5 million. There is no number at which he'll stop. But unfortunately, I think through most of this war, in the minds of European policymakers and indeed Washington, they have created a limit in their minds. Oh, well, Putin will stop when the cost reaches this or the cost reaches that. No, there is no human cost for him that will not be too great to save his own skin.
Well, he just doesn't care about the Russian people as such, that he can't even do this because, he comes from the KGB and then he comes from this organized crime branch, right? He has to act like these big top dogs of the Russian organized crime and caring about his own people. Well, that has never really happened inside of Russia. The level of uncaringness and his image and what he does in reality, and what's considered cool in his upper rankings there, that's easily shown by the very simple fact that, for example, imagine if a German chancellor would drive around with a car that's not German, right? And like basically Putin had to recently just force everyone to sit in Russian cars, and now they don't like it. It was considered to be faux pas to drive around if you were some sort of governor of a region or something, or even head of state in Russian cars. That's considered a bad thing. See, the utter disregard for their own people. That's, why would you care about them?
But
that's
envy. There's also envy. I mean, this thing about cars is interesting.
It also causes down this, like, he truly does not believe in democracy at all.
No.
He in his eyes, elections everywhere are a sham, complete sham, and he feels this weird thing that he believes that everyone else is like scamming in elections and doing all these horrible things, and that there is no real honesty in the world. Yet we're blaming him for the things that we do it. We're doing this ourselves. This is why he sees this is what he sees as hypocrisy of the Western part, and he just refuses to believe that there could be actually, real people doing something on their own, showing some real action there. This is why he also doesn't believe in 2000, like in Maidan events. That this is why he also doesn't, he doesn't believe that there is any protest going on against the dictatorial regime that would be not funded by the CIA or MI6. The evil Anglo-Saxon hand is everywhere,
Because there's no such thing as real organic politics. I mean, there's a very interesting thing, and I'm sure this might sort of trigger some recognition here as well. But I remember getting a tour of a town. Now, this town was quite an interesting one. It's called Vorkuta. It's right up in the far north. And this tour, essentially, and there's some, talking to some local people, and they were inordinately proud. I mean, genuinely proud of some German-built buildings in the town, because these things had aged much better than the so-called Khrushchevchiki, the sort of, Khrushchev-era buildings of the 1950s. These buildings were built by German Nazi prisoners of war. So you'd expect people to, I hate the Nazis. No, they're immensely proud that some Germans have been in their town and have built these things. And look at the craftsmanship. They've survived. So there's a mixture of envy and loathing. And it's quite a complex kind of thing.
That Russian mix of self-loathing and insecurity is, I think, a lot of why we are where we are. I mean, look at what like cinema. They made a superhero movie with all these kind of iconic Soviet or Russian emblems as the superhero characters, and they said, "Look, see, we can do it too." And what you want to say is, you are a cheap knockoff imitation of that, and in their heart of hearts, I think they know that, and I think this drives a lot of their motivation.
It's like a rip-off of Temu, isn't it? It's not even a Temu. It's the Temu
and they
of
know
Temu.
it.
They know it. I sat through all those through the prison time, captivity time. They kept having this local radio station on a loop, and the only things they played were Cher and Do You Believe in Life After Love, Boney M, and Chris Rea on the beach. The rest of it was just like Russians singing Western knockoffs, and you're sitting there in the cell going, Is that Ed Sheeran?
I love the
Russian,
I love that.
Not
that
to make light
range,
of your
though.
experience, Sean, but that's
Rea.
a form of oral torture as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And ABBA was the worst. I mean, ABBA just. I went down when I was released.
Of course they did.
Waterloo was just the worst, because that now sets off my PTS dizzles, and you're just sitting there listening to. Just sitting there and listening, and even my wife laughs at me and says, "Do you want me to turn this off?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" It just takes me back to that moment, where you're just hearing Waterloo 3 times a day. I mean, it was just Makivka radio at its worst, and that was more torture than the torture, to be fair, because that's every day for 3 months listening to Boney M and Chris Rea and the same track on Now 11.
I have a relevant news piece for that, by the way. I have a relevant news piece. They recently uncovered, dedicated a new monument to Felix Dzerzhinsky. I think it was Yekaterinburg or something. And out there, I was watching the video to take a look at what's going on, and they're playing Jesus Christ Superstar in the background, like choo 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 choo. And I was like, what's going on? Did someone mess something up? No. Turns out that recently, a couple of years ago, for some sort of movie, they used the full melody of Jesus Christ Superstar, just modified it to be about Dzerzhinsky. It's about like they put the lyrics. They put lyrics on how brave Czechists shoot kulaks on the background of Jesus Christ Superstar. So if you Google that one up, so yeah.
I'm just wondering, when Sean's driving down the road with his missus and ABBA comes on, whether he just turns around and says, can you get the electrodes out? I want to attach one to my testicles because, quite frankly, it's better than this shit.
Oh
It's
my
just
God.
one of the headlines when I was exchanged to death by ABBA, Brit guy released from captivity. And I was like, well, I didn't quite say it like that, It's like the media just blew it all out of proportion.
Can I just
Let's welcome
before-
Jason to the stage while he's
Hey guys,
Jason, great
How's it
to
going?
see
Hey.
you.
good to see you all.
Hi, Jason.
How are you guys doing?
Very good, thank you, Jason. Good to
Going.
speak.
All things considered.
All things considered, yes, it seems like it's could be better.
Yeah,
Well, I'm in Lviv. I'm not in Kiev right now, so I think I can see electric lights. I know my other friends in Kiev have said the electricity is more or less been brought back on. Yes.
Yeah, I'm in Dnipro and we got smashed last night. We've been up since 12.
Yeah, you
We had
did.
4 hours
I
of
just
drones
missed it.
and then ballistics, and they fly like near the house, over the house, and we're on that right flight path because it's a bloody nightmare.
it's got worse as well because it looks like they're starting to hit Dnipro with guided glide bombs. I think for the first time, which is
The second time now is yesterday.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
they used they're throwing the kitchen sink and everything at us now. I think the last one was about 2 months ago, and we just had a warning that the next 48 hours we could expect another big attack. So
actually,
Generally.
that's a good time to say this. I know Jason's just come and joined, but this could be a stimulus to talk about stuff. So a couple of things. First of all, just to get some breaking news, if you like, a chilling new warning from Kiev's mayor, former world heavyweight champ Klitschko, says a new attack is predicted and residents must stock up on water, food, first aid kits, warm clothes, and be as pragmatic as possible. So that's a bit of bad news, sort of dooming for what might happen. But interesting ones here. UK has delivered hundreds of air defense missiles to Ukraine 5 months ahead of schedule. The delivery comes amid a strengthening defense partnership. Ukraine's largest drone manufacturer is investing 200 million quid in building 2 factories in Britain. And this one might be for a conversation. Ukraine is coordinating Tomahawk missile transfer details with the US, the foreign ministry has said. Teams are discussing technical aspects, including variants, launch platforms, and configurations. Ministry spokesman Hiori Tiki has reported. So it looks like Tomahawks could be on the agenda. Discuss.
it's the name of my new cat.
Is it? Nice.
I think I've said somebody suggesting some names for my cat. It went to 37,000 views. You put a cat on your Instagram and a cat on your X, you've got it sorted. You'd be able to raise so much more money if you had cats.
This is where I've gone wrong.
Kittens. This is where you've gone wrong, to be fair.
And we've got someone with a bit of fur on his face, but it's not cute. It's Mr. Pierce.
Which can I just say, but again, before Jason just pipes in with whatever he is going to enlighten us with, can I just draw our attention back to the fundraising just really quickly? And can I just say the fur on my face, my friend, is successful because we're almost at 17,000 euros. ATP Geopolitics, Eastern Border, 8,667, and Silicon Curtain over the 7,000 at 7,195. So keep that going, guys. Thank you so much to all the people who so generously contributed. Follow the links down below. My one's atpgeo.com/donate. Links should be in the descriptions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to quickly say goodbye to everyone because, well, I am 22 kilometers from the Russian border, and like my electricity flickered around, and I feel like my web's not doing well, and I have some things to do. I might actually plop in a bit later. For how long do you intend to go? I'm gonna finalize my work here. So sorry that I have to leave quickly. Just that it's gonna be better rather than me just reloading all the time. But
No, it's
nice
great to have you.
Hey,
Great to
nice
have you
be
on.
here.
We'll do a full
Okay,
interview
mate.
at some point, just because I know there's going to a lot to talk about there. So we'll.
Oh, please
welcome
do.
you back
And
later, and
I
then-
will write in the comments if I hear any Russian jets entering our airspace too. You're gonna find it here first. Okay.
Yes.
Bye, folks.
Right,
Good up.
cheers.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Christos.
Cheers, guys.
Jason. Tomahawks. What? I don't believe anything until I see it happen. What are the chances of them actually being supplied?
It seems that it's very probable, with a high degree of certitude. It seems that it's actually they're working on other logistics of it, but that part of it's not the question. I think it's actually different elements of it at this point. But I will say, Jonathan, I'll just mention before we start, your name came up in a conversation yesterday in a very pleasant way. I was having lunch with our mutual friend David Satter, and he spoke extremely
yes,
highly
yeah.
of you. And he said, Jonathan's such a good guy. He does such good interviews. I really like Jonathan. I said, I will communicate that to him when I speak tomorrow. So
Well, that's
he
very
spoke
nice.
very highly of you. And then that evening, the very same day, I had dinner with none other than Ilya Ponomarov. And Ilya also sends his warm regards.
Ilya's a fantastic person, and it always makes me feel slightly nervous to feel that Ilya considers me a friend, because Russians have tried to kill him on numerous occasions. But David is an absolute gentleman.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, Jason's got that slightly wrong. Like,
he's talking about
he
me,
probably
Jonathan.
didn't realize, but
was
he got the Jonathan wrong. Like, they're actually talking about Jonathan MS Pierce, and everyone knows that clearly I'm their friends. I mean, I don't really know them, but I'm definitely.
You don't know who they are, but yeah. Why not? No, David is a splendid human being, and he was. I think he and Luke Harding vie for the title of this. But who was the first Western journalist debarred from the modern Russian Federation? I think it was Satter who was actually expelled. But I'll have to look at the dates there, because they both sort of claim that.
I think you're right there.
It's funny, I was hanging out with Satter's son last week. He's a journalist for Reuters. But anyways, it doesn't make a difference. But I asked him that exact question, oddly enough. And I said, your dad was the first to get thrown out, or how was it? And as I recall, he said he was the first American to be PNG'd. And I don't know if that means that there was not other journalists that got expelled before, but the first American to be formally PNG'd or expelled permanently from the country, because he was living there. So he's expelled and PNG'd both, not just PNG'd.
Yeah, because I think Luke Harding's permit to report in Russia was revoked. His visa was revoked. I don't know whether he was necessarily given that kind of ban or foreign agent type designation. I mean, that's changed now. But I mean, both of them do sterling work, and it always sticks with me, Luke Harding's story about how he became aware of the FSB actually following him around, and he'd been out in the countryside, came back to his flat, which I think was on the 11th or 13th floor in Moscow, to realize that the windows in his son's nursery, which you technically can't really open, it's a safety feature, but that had been disabled, so the window was wide open, quite scary. And there was cigarette butts in an ashtray. None of them smoked, but there was an ashtray and cigarette butts there. So, and also a copy of the Kama Sutra had been placed on his side of the bed with a bookmark on a particular page, like we're listening to everything you do and say.
And isn't it Luke who also kind of intimates that it was that there was kind of a emasculation kind of thing, or a sexual component to it, of them leaving like a porno on the TV, like a pornographic film, and he would come back and things, or pornographic photographs in the middle of a book or something like that, which obviously betrays their own pathology.
It does. I mean, Peter Pomerantsev talks about Russian imperialism in this very visceral sense. He talks not just about its political mechanics, he talks about the sadomasochism that underpins it as well, the need to control and abuse. I don't want to be triggering here, but Jason studied this. Sean's lived it in close quarters.
I mean, and not to derail things, but I mean, as long as we are talking about journalists who are getting kicked out, I mean, I know many of us have kind of issues with Steve Rosenberg. I mean, I've known Steve for many, many, many years, and I am not. This is not the hill I'm going to die on. I'm not going to make an argument about Steve, but I think it is important for us to still have Western journalists on that side, even if they are vastly, inhibited in what they can do and say. So,
it's
a fine line to walk. It's a fine line to walk.
Not got over their Russophilia. Sorry.
What a complicated life.
Not the hill. Not the hill. I'm not fighting this one.
No, it's a difficult position to be in. I mean, when you deal with the intelligence services of Russia, I've also dealt with them. I was thrown out of Russia in 2009, but it was much later. And that was because I was working with people. Well, I was hired to work with the U.S. government's program. I was working with Boris Nemtsov and Garry Kasparov and other people. And that's why I was thrown out for being a national security risk. But I was also arrested and interrogated for several days in Uzbekistan for espionage. And I was also thrown out of Belarus. Then I got thrown out of another country. But it's neither here nor there. With the Soviet countries, was what was interesting about it was it's very similar. Actually, when I was interrogating Uzbekistan, it was people from the Russian FSB who came for the interrogation. Well, it was initially Uzbeks, and then they brought these Russian. I mean, I know the Russians because they have Moscow accents, and they have blonde hair and blue eyes, which is not very common in Uzbekistan. And so, especially if you're trying to get a job in the government services. So there was, they're pretty interesting people. I've had my apartment searched before, and these sorts of things, these sorts of strange incidences, let's call them. Yeah, it's sort of exciting. But in the case of how this all works, it is sort of interesting.
I didn't find it exciting. I was like, but it's very similar to be honest, because I had the MGB, which is like the Donetsk People's Republic's version of the FSB, who were quite slow and clearly looked like they were being dragged into a job they didn't particularly understand. Burnt out policeman was how I referred to him, from the Sweeney for 30 years. Couldn't remember what they were talking to us about. Clearly no interrogation skills. Didn't understand really what they, or remember what they were talking to us about the last interview, the last interrogation. And that's deeply frustrating when you have to go back through all that again with a set of new guys who are stupid. And then you had, like Mr. Smart said, you had absolutely a new generation, absolutely FSB, absolutely clearly had interrogation training. They had nice gear. They weren't wearing rough gear. They were wearing nice watches, nice suits. Clearly the regional accent changed from what I was used to in the east of Ukraine to a Moscow style accent. Even one guy spoke perfect English without an accent, which straight away I was like, well, you're not from around here. You were able to pick those guys up and start working. These guys are clearly FSB, even though we only ever heard the word mentioned once after Paul Urey had been beaten to death in prison. So, it was identical. And the same, because my background is SEER and survival training and resistance training, that was easy to really pick up. And my training hadn't changed from when I did it in the 90s. It was still relevant in 2022 when I was captured by the rest. It hadn't changed in 20, 30 years.
And John Sweeney, doesn't he, talks about, in his film and interviews, he talks about the instruments of torment that have been found in numerous, basements and black sites they created in the occupied territories. You got the, the slon or the elephant, which is the sort of gas mask, which they take the filter out and use you to asphyxiate you. And then there's the universal electrodes and all that kind of stuff.
The wind-up telephone. They got the wind-up telephone that they use to get a charge. It's
Tapic, the tapping.
What do they call it? A call to Putin, I think, was the phrase for it, wasn't it?
That is.
Somebody, they asked me what my most frequent question I want to get was it like to be electrocuted? I said, well, actually, it's quite quiet. It's really quiet, actually, because one, you're being electrocuted. Nobody wants to touch you. Philip might have heard this before because he did it in his studio with the miners.
Yes, that's right.
First of all, nobody wants to touch
about that, didn't we?
Electrocuted. And then what happens then is you go up for the bolt of electricity. I was literally standing in my chair and you're strapped to the chair where you can't move. So you stand up. It's dead quiet. All you can hear is as the electrical current goes through and you're using that wind-up Tapic you just referred to. And then when your body relaxes, you just slump down in the chair, you're dribbling, but all your body relaxes. And this is a funny bit because when my body relaxed, I let out this almighty fart. Really seriously big fart. And when they dragged me back to the cell, I was in with two guys like this carrying me back to the cell, and I was such in a bad way, and all I heard one of them was go and they just giggled, and I thought, this has got to be the worst day of my life, just going being dragged back to an interrogation cell. And I didn't really have the next day my legs blew up and I couldn't walk. The capillaries were bleeding through my legs. Literally they'd gone double the size. I mean, it was really in a bad way. But I refer to it, and that's generally the most requested question I get is, what was torture like? Everyone's got this macabre, and I said it wasn't great. It was like, but they're interested in how it works, and it wasn't inventive either.
3.5 out of 10.
I get the same sort of thing when people talk to me about combat. What's it like to be in combat? What's it like to, see someone die as a result of combat. You know, that kind of thing.
It's starvation was the worst, to be honest. Starvation is with you every day. It changes your mood. It changes your moods, really, from anger to tired. You're constantly looking for food. Food, when it does come, becomes a commodity, a danger with other prisoners. Then you're fighting, which is what they want. They want that friction between other prisoners. They know that. So it's a really dangerous thing, food. But starvation is with you every day, and you're constantly thinking of food. But those interrogations and electric shocks are over quite quickly. You can't train for pain, and there's nothing that can really train for that. But you can mitigate it somewhat, and you have to cling on to those small victories. So generally, it was only a short period, but yeah, I mean, it's very. Don't get me wrong. I say to people that you talk about those days sometimes with a bit of humor because it's a coping mechanism, but it was exceptionally hard time, as Jason would tell you, and from
black humor is important. But
it's massive.
I live a very, very lucky life. I mean, I occasionally get asked, "What's it like to be a YouTuber?" What's it like? Oh, it's so difficult. Oh, it's really difficult. God, things I've had to endure, sitting there listening to people bang on. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah,
we have to talk to me and Mr. Terry, for instance.
That is a form of torture. It is a form of torture.
Mr. Terry has entered the room.
I'm gonna hop back off because I have a dinner date to go to here. I know. Sure. Well, no. I think maybe 6 people will all, and knowing this lot, will all start yammering and talking over one another. So.
I will let Jason say more and Greg as well. So Greg, it's great to see you, but my missus just got back. I'll pop on a little later.
Now you're making me feel guilty.
And actually,
Sean,
Jonathan, you need to have a break so I can take over and host. At some point.
Jonathan is leaving right now because Jonathan's leaving right now because he doesn't want me to pull out his Christian tendencies of singing gospel hymns when we're near missile strikes.
We should all hold hands, like on the screen here.
Don't bring out the overt atheist in me already.
Okay, there you go.
But good to
what
see
time
you,
do you think
Greg.
that might be, Jonathan? What time do you think you're going to
want me
rejoin
back?
us?
Because I've got to go to the cinema with my missus tonight and have a meal out. So that was bad timing for her to
it's just up to you whenever you're
on the 12-hour marathon. So
you're back, it's fine.
But the age group I'm with here is having a dinner, so I've got to go short. That's my excuse.
You go.
But I'll try and pop back on. I'll try and pop back on. But Sean, before I leave, I did want to touch on one thing you said. I think it's important, and I don't know if you guys want to carry on with this particular theme any further, but I do want to make the point that when you're talking about like using food as a weapon to turn prisoners against one another, it reminds me of the story of Nadia from Pussy Riot, who tells the story of how they would do the exact same thing. That it was very important. Part of their control system within the prison was to pit prisoners against them. So somebody would get extra time in the yard. Someone else would resent that. They would take minutes away from one person's time, or they would give better food to one prisoner to create tension with another prisoner. So I thank you for bringing that up because I think we all just. It exemplifies what we're working with here. So, Jonathan Fink or Jonathan Pierce, after my dinner, perhaps if I haven't had one too many glasses of wine, I'll pop back on. And donate. Everybody donate. Donate. Trucks. All right, gentlemen. All of you are wonderful people, and I'll try and come back on a little later. Do take care,
buddy.
Have a good one.
All right. Always, every day. All right. Take care.
So, Jonathan, if I go for an hour now and then pop back to give you a chance to have a break yourself, how does it UK time? So it's 4:30 now. If I do 5:30 to 6:30, I've got to kind of shoot off at 6:30. Really, does that sound all right?
Well, I'll hold the slot from 5 to 6 because we've got Konstantin Samalov and we've got Yuri Rashkin. No, not everyone's going to be on for that one. That's a sort of little special segment there. But if you wanted to pop on for that or come back later this evening, that's super cool.
Yeah. So other than that, like, I mean, I'll come back before that happens and get some interaction with Greg. But like, I will be going probably from sort of 6:30 through to probably gone 10:30. I would have thought. So that's a good 4 hours. I'll be away.
Wee bit later,
Okay. Are you okay then? You don't need to break now. Or
we'll sort it. And there's a few people coming on later who may be able to hold the fort.
Greg can hold the fort, and he needs to.
I'll let Greg and Jason talk now, and I'll hop off too and come back later because I've got my wife said I've got to go for some dinner or something, you know. And...
Sean,
Greg,
this is we see each other in our group. But this is the first time we've met personally, as I'm meeting Mr. Smart for the first time. So thank you, man, for all that you do for Ukraine.
Thank you.
I appreciate.
I'll stick around for a bit, but I might shoot then. I'll
go
these two talk and jump.
I appreciate you deeply, man.
Yeah, love you all. Greg, I'll see you in a minute.
Later, JP.
If you get somebody else, kick me off because I've overstayed my welcome. I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Well, we're going to clear the studio around 5 to do a segment. Then